Welcome to the Depth Dive. Today, we're plunging into something really tough. What does it take to lead when everything, and I mean everything, goes wrong?
Yeah, what's the difference between leaders who kind of steer through the storm and come out okay, maybe even stronger, and those who just falter?
Exactly. Crisis leadership. It's the ultimate test, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. No question. It just strips away everything else. You see what someone's really made of when the pressure's on like that. Internal crisis, external shockwave, doesn't matter. How you handle it defines you.
And we've been digging into this really interesting excerpt. It boils things down to 7 real-world lessons in leading through crisis. Some powerful stuff in there.
It really is. So our goal here for this deep dive is basically to unpack those 7 lessons. Look at the examples they give real leaders, real crises, and pull out the core wisdom.
Think of it as like a shortcut to understanding what actually works when things hit the fan.
Right, because the central idea, the thing that jumps out right away,
Mhm.
is that leadership isn't really tested when times are good.
Anyone can look good then.
Exactly. The real test comes when the plan goes out the window, when the future you expected just evaporates.
And there's often no playbook, right?
Yeah,
You might not even know what caused the crisis at first.
totally. Or how bad it's going to get. That's when a leader has to pull everyone together, look reality square in the eye, even the ugly parts, think about worst case scenarios.
And somehow figure out a way forward, a flexible way, probably.
Yeah, definitely flexible. And
Yeah.
while you can't prepare for every specific crisis,
Because who knows what's coming?
right. But this material argues there are these, let's call them universal principles, these 7 lessons that apply no matter what kind of disaster you're facing.
They give you a kind of framework.
A framework for tackling the unpredictable. Yeah.
Okay, so let's dive into the first one, lesson 1. It sounds simple, but I bet it's incredibly hard. Face reality, starting with yourself.
It's fundamental. And it's not just about saying, okay, sales are down. The source really emphasizes that it starts internally.
What do you mean?
Like the leader has to look in the mirror first. Confront the situation honestly, yes, but also their own part in it. Maybe decisions they made, things they missed, and take responsibility. No excuses.
Okay. That's tough. The source gives examples, right?
Yeah, a really stark contrast. You've got Indra Nooyi at PepsiCo. She faced shareholder issues, publicly admitted they had lost market share back in 2010, made changes, sure put, what, $600 million more into marketing soft drinks?
Tactical stuff.
Right. But the key thing the source points out is she owned the problem while staying true to PepsiCo's overall purpose. She faced the numbers, faced the challenge.
Okay, so that's one side. What's the contrast?
Well, the material then talks about Jeff Immelt at GE, and it paints a picture of someone who consistently didn't really acknowledge the underlying problems, things like bad acquisitions, performance issues, even this huge, $15 billion undisclosed insurance liability.
Wow. Didn't acknowledge them.
Or didn't address the root causes. Like, instead of dealing with GE being too reliant on GE Capital, its financial arm, the source says he actually quintupled the consumer finance part, loaded up with debt, basically, made it riskier.
Which led to...
Well, the source connects it directly to having to call President Bush for bailout in 2008 and the cost to shareholders, over $300 billion in lost value during his time.
Oof. So the difference is stark. One faced it, one didn't.
Exactly. And the source kind of turns it back on you, the listener. It asks, think about your own setbacks, even small ones. Did you really look at your role? Did you take responsibility? Or did you kind of blame external stuff?
That internal honesty. It's like practice for the big crises.
Builds the muscle, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that leads naturally into lesson 2. Dig deep for the root cause.
Meaning the obvious problem might not be the real problem.
Precisely. Often it's just a symptom. Real crisis leadership means you got to get past the surface noise and figure out what's fundamentally broken underneath.
And the example here is Anne Mulcahy at Xerox, right? Back in 2000.
Oh yeah, what a story. She walks into a company that's just on the edge. Revenue tanking, sales force in chaos, no new products, $18 billion in debt, credit lines maxed out.
Morale through the floor, stock price crashing.
Literally, 1 week's worth of cash left. Can you imagine?
Yeah. So what did the outsiders say?
Advisors looked at the symptoms with the financial disaster and said, Chapter 11, bankruptcy. It's the only way.
But she didn't buy it.
Nope. She dug deeper. And she found the root cause wasn't just the market or bad sales. It was an internal accounting issue. They were booking future revenues way too early without accounting for the costs associated with them. basically painting a fake picture of health.
So the financial collapse was a symptom of that deeper problem.
Exactly. And once she understood that, she refused bankruptcy. She famously said something like, bankruptcy is never a win, or people believed we were in a war we can win.
So what did she do instead?
She attacked the root, slashed billions in operating costs. Yeah, cut staff 38,000 people, a huge number. But, and this is key, the source notes she protected R&D and field sales, the future engines.
Smart.
Barry launched 60 new products, fixed the accounting, and eventually turned it around, restored growth. But it all started with finding the real issue.
Amazing. Okay, that connects to lesson 3, engage with frontline teams.
Yeah, you can't lead from a bubble, especially not in a crisis. You absolutely have to talk to the people doing the actual work, facing the customers, dealing with the operations on the ground.
They know what's really going on.
They do. They have crucial information, and frankly, you need their trust and buy-in for any solution to work.
The source mentions Dr. Peter Pisters at MD Anderson in 2017.
Right. He came into an organization that was pretty broken, low morale, losing money. The previous leader had apparently really pushed faculty hard on productivity to fund research, and a lot of good people left.
So, a tough situation to inherit.
Definitely. But Pisters came in differently. He projected confidence, sure, but also, like, real humility, a genuine interest in learning from the people there.
How did he show that?
Well, his first message, day one, he said he was ready to unlearn and relearn through a listening and learning tour. He explicitly went out to hear their views.
And he tackled the tough stuff, like the faculty senate being at war with the old administration.
Yeah, he didn't avoid it. He met with them regularly, listened, built trust, changed that whole dynamic.
And the results?
Pretty impressive, according to the source. Record participation in the engagement survey, 89%. Engagement scores shot up by double digits. Burnout went down by 6%. And almost everyone, 98%, felt aligned with the mission again.
Wow. Just by listening and engaging.
It shows that trust flows upwards when leaders genuinely connect with the front lines.
Okay, lesson 4 is a bit provocative. Never waste a good crisis.
Huh? Yeah, it sounds a bit cynical, maybe. But the idea is that crises, even though they're painful, they create this opening, a chance to make changes that were maybe needed anyway, but were too hard to push through in normal time.
Finding the opportunity in the chaos.
Basically, yeah. The example uses Lloyd Blankfein at Goldman Sachs, post-2008 financial crisis. They were getting hammered, right?
Yeah.
Criticism over pay, deals, lawsuits, Congress, bad press.
Intense pressure.
Totally. The easy thing might have been to just, play defense, get defensive. But Blankfein, according to the source, created this Business Standards Committee, the BSC, pulled in 150 senior partners, had board oversight.
And what did it do?
It wasn't just for show. It was a serious top-to-bottom look at everything they did, how committees worked, approvals, communication, training, the works.
He used the crisis heat to force an internal review.
Exactly. And it led to a report with 39 concrete recommendations for improvement. So by doing that proactively under pressure, he kind of got ahead of regulators maybe imposing something worse, and he used the crisis spotlight to actually make Goldman Sachs arguably a better firm for its clients.
Turning threat into improvement.
Yeah.
Clever.
Right. Using the crisis energy. Okay, lesson 5 brings us back to a hard reality. Get ready for the long haul.
Meaning crises often last longer than we think.
Yeah, they rarely wrap up quickly or neatly. Leaders need to accept that possibility and make decisions based on enduring the long haul, not just surviving the next few weeks. Think marathon, not sprint.
The example is Corey Berry at Best Buy right when COVID hit.
Yeah, talk about being thrown in the deep end. Only CEO for, 8 months? And suddenly this pandemic threatens their entire business model stores, Geek Squad in homes, all of it.
So what did she do?
She recognized quickly this wasn't going to be short. So she set these 3 principles, very long-term focused. 1, safety first employees and customers. 2, avoid layoffs as long as possible. 3, every decision based on long-term value creation.
And that led to some big moves.
Huge moves. Closing stores to appointments or curbside only, suspending the in-home stuff, corporate working from home. They did end up furloughing a lot of people, about 20%, but the stated goal was always about emerging strong later.
And financially, how did they prepare for the long haul?
They went into full cash preservation mode. She and the board took 50% pay cuts, her team 20%, drew down their entire credit line, $1.25 billion, plus they had $2 billion cash, stopped buying back shares, cut inventory orders, stretched out payments to suppliers, halted big capital projects, just hoarding cash to endure.
Sounds intense, but focused.
Very. But with that long view, And the source says by November 2020, it wasn't just survival. They'd actually accelerated their strategy, combining stores and online, expanded Geek Squad options differently, and gained market share.
Because they planned for it to be long.
Exactly. They didn't just react defensively for a short shock. They restructured for a longer reality and found ways to serve customers differently.
Okay, this next one feels really core to leadership integrity. Lesson 6. In the spotlight, follow your true north.
This is about when crisis puts you under that intense public microscope. Your actions get magnified. And in those moments, your decisions have to line up with your core values, your integrity, what the source calls your true north.
Your internal compass.
Exactly. And the example is powerful Starbucks, Howard Schultz, Kevin Johnson, after that terrible incident in Philadelphia. 2 black men arrested just for waiting. The video went viral.
A nightmare scenario for a brand built on being a welcoming third place.
Absolutely. It struck right at their core values. And Schultz's reaction, quoted in the source, is telling. He said he felt sick, embarrassed, ashamed, called it the antithesis of what Starbucks stands for. He took it personally.
He owned it.
He really did. The source even mentions he asked the manager if police would have been called if the men were white, and she apparently said, probably not. That honesty, confronting that reality, hit his true north.
Yeah.
It meant he had to act authentically.
And the actions followed.
Directly. He didn't hide, went there, apologized personally, settled financially, took public accountability. And the big one, closing all 8,000 U.S. stores for a day for racial bias training.
A huge, costly move, but aligned with the values they started.
Right. And by doing that, taking responsibility, acting quickly, aligning actions with stated values, even when it hurt, they managed the crisis and minimized the long-term brand damage. They followed their true north when everyone was watching.
Showing, not just telling. Okay, lesson 7, the final one. Go on offense. Focus on winning now.
This one's interesting. It says, okay, defense is necessary in a crisis. Stop the bleeding, right? But the best leaders also look for ways to play offense during the crisis. How can we advance our mission? How can we create value now? How can we focus on winning, not just surviving?
Don't just shrink back. Find ways to move forward.
Exactly. The example is Jen Hyman at Went the Runaway, RTR, during COVID. Their whole model was about, renting high-end fashion, democratizing it. They were growing fast.
And then COVID hits, events canceled, everyone's in sweatpants.
Right. Revenue just plummeted. So she acted fast defensively, cut costs everywhere. CapEx, inventory, budgets, cut staff by 40%, raised $100 million in funding just to survive. Necessary defense.
But the offense part.
She didn't just focus on survival. She anchored everything back to their original mission. Talk about post-COVID being like a second founding moment. Reaffirmed their whole purpose, taking on this elitist industry, giving women access, refused to let the pandemic kill that vision.
So using the crisis to recommit to the core purpose.
And to position RTR for the future. The source says she used the pandemic disruption to actually strengthen their model, make it more competitive. Instead of just weathering the storm, she looked for advantage within it.
And it worked.
Well, she took RTR public in October 2021. And the source notes it was the first IPO ever with a female founder CEO, a female COO, and a female CFO. So yeah, she found a way to play offense and advance even through that incredibly tough period.
Wow. So not just surviving, but potentially leapfrogging.
That's the idea. Finding ways to accelerate change or gain ground when others are just trying to stay afloat.
Okay, so let's pull these 7 lessons together. Face reality, dig deep, engage frontline teams, never waste a crisis, get ready for the long haul, follow your true north, and go on offense. It's quite a framework.
It really is. And it all comes back to that core idea. Crisis is the real test. Every single leader faces it sooner or later.
And getting through it well isn't about having some magic formula up front. It's about that honesty, that deep digging, listening, seeing opportunity, endurance, integrity.
And maintaining that forward momentum, that vision. The source authors connect this all back to discovering your true north, your values, who you are, and your North Star, your purpose. Leading through crisis authentically means using your head, yes, but also your heart. Passion, compassion, moral courage.
Staying true to your values when it's hardest. And that courage, it's not automatic, right? The source suggests you build it.
Yeah, by testing yourself, facing difficult situations, maybe starting small, and learning from them is how you develop that resilience, that capability.
It's an active process. So we've done a pretty deep dive here into these lessons, these examples, all from this source material.
Yeah, I think the big takeaway is crisis is tough. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have to be fatal. Following principles like these, the ones we've discussed.
It can be the difference between sinking and swimming.
Or even more than swimming, maybe emerging stronger, maybe making those bold moves you couldn't make before. It's about transforming the challenge.
So, thinking about all this, a final thought for you listening. What's maybe one thing you could do differently, starting now, to prepare yourself or your team for that next crisis, whenever it comes?
Or maybe, which of these 7 lessons feels like the biggest personal challenge for you?
Ah,
Facing reality. Going on offense. Something to chew on.